Previously on Chat 62.
I got to the fleet in March of '07 and got stationed at Camp Pendleton. Again, up until this point, I'd never really left the East Coast and hadn't been anywhere really amazing or big outside of Charlotte, because I rode bulls around Charlotte, so that wasn't really that big of a deal to me. But going to Camp Pendleton in San Diego, that was probably even more cultural shock for me than going to boot camp, honestly.
Real quick before we start, we streamlined our contact info. From now on, if you have any questions, feedback, or ideas for future guests, just shoot us an email at chat62podcast@gmail.com. All right, let's go. And in 2012, were you still a sergeant, or were you ready? Or were you a staff already?
No, I was still a sergeant at this time. So sergeant was actually my longest rank. I went into the Marine Corps as a PFC, got promoted to Lance Corporal shortly after hitting the fleet in 2007, got promoted to Corporal in 2008, got promoted to Sergeant in 2009. So within 3 years of joining the Marine Corps, I was a sergeant. And it was just because of my MOS, honestly. It just how it worked sometimes with some of the jobs. And I was a sergeant in 3 years, but I was a sergeant from 2009 until 2014.
Wow.
So for 5 years, I was a sergeant. Yeah.
And I asked this of a lot of multi-enlisted service members. What prompted you to re-enlist?
Honestly, for me, re-enlistment was the easy decision.
Okay.
Because, again, up until, my first enlistment was for 5 years, because being a dad, a Marine, we had, at that time, we had to sign a 5-year contract. So our first enlistment had to be 5 years of active service. And so it was in 2011 when I re-enlisted, or was up for re-enlistment, and I was in between deployments. I was like, yeah, sure. It was easy. I didn't have any plans outside the Marine Corps at all. Because again, I just come back from a deployment the year prior.
Yeah.
And really didn't have a clue what I was going to do with my life. Oh, and one thing I did miss actually before. So when I went to Afghanistan the second time, my wife had just had our son 10 days before I left to go to Afghanistan in 2012.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So again, milestones after milestones after extremes every single time. Again, it's our daughter, only kid at the time, she was getting ready to turn 2. Yeah, again, I didn't have any plans of what I wanted to do after. And so I was like, it was the easy decision for me. I just go ahead and raise my right hand again, re-enlist, and carry on, do another 4 years, see what happens then. And that was kind of the decision maker almost every single time. It was re-enlisting for me was the easy decision. Deciding to get out was always the hard one for me.
Yeah, and the way, or the reason why, and we'll definitely get into that. So you finally pick up staff in 2014. What did you understand as a staff sergeant that you didn't as a junior Marine?
So I think even though I was a sergeant for 5 years, that was the best time for me in learning what it meant to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a lot from my time as a sergeant, and really that shaped how I was a staff NCO. And actually, again, so here's another kind of almost kind of like a deployment, but not a combat deployment. So got promoted to staff sergeant in May of 2014, got orders to PCS because that's what monitors like to do. You pick up staff NCO. And at that time, staff sergeants in my MOS, they didn't have them at the infantry battalions. So I had to move anyways. And so I got orders to Okinawa, Japan. And so went through the whole ordeal, did all the medical stuff for me and the family. My son's medical stuff came back, and he was denied. So the family couldn't go with me to Okinawa.
Oh.
Tried to talk to my monitor. I was TAD to one of the Marine regiments, so with the infantry regiments here at Camp Lejeune, because my infantry battalion was actually in Okinawa on UDP right after I got promoted. And we were trying to, I was just trying to stay here. They needed a new staff NCO, a data staff NCO, because theirs just went on recruiting. So I was like, this is like perfect. Like my family can't go. You guys need a new staff sergeant. Like, cool. Had to master guns, try to talk to the monitor. The monitor was like, yep, don't care. Nope, needs in the Marine Corps. He's going to be there. He's going to be there in August. It doesn't even matter. So I was like, all right, whatever. So my family had to stay behind. And at this point, we had already had a third kid. Our youngest daughter had just turned 1 right before I went to Okinawa. Yeah.
How long were you in Okinawa for?
I was there for a year.
Okay, so if you would have had if you were able to take your family with you, it would have been a 3-year stay.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
It'd have been 3-year tour. And if I would have said, no, I'm not taking my family without like the medical piece, it would have been 2 years unaccompanied. But since there was a medical thing, it was a 1 year unaccompanied.
Okay.
Which was nice. So it was only a year, but still it's a year. Like nobody wants to be gone for 12 months, you know? And again, kind of the same thing. I'm in Okinawa. Time kind of stands still for me in life, so to speak, because I deal with the Marines. It was my first real duty station as a staff sergeant. Like granted, I was at an infantry regiment, but again, I was only TAD there. So I there was only like certain things I could do. And I knew I was only going to be there for a limited time. So I came in to a Marine communications squadron. So a wing communications squadron. So again, went back to the wing, but in Okinawa. And I think my biggest challenge going there as a brand new staff sergeant, coming from the infantry world, off of a combat deployment with infantry into a Marine wing communication squadron that doesn't deploy. They just do exercises. And the majority of the Marines there are on their first term. So no, what I would consider deployment experience, right? They may have went to Korea or to Australia for like 6 months or a couple months here or there, went to Thailand for a month or two here or there, right, for exercises. But I didn't, at the time, I never considered those as actual deployments because of how I grew up in the Marine Corps. So I will say that shift in mindset of the General Marine at my new unit was a major challenge. And it's hard to kind of identify. I don't even know like what that mentality is, because again, like coming from a place to where if you fall asleep on post while on deployment, literally somebody could die, right?
Yeah.
If you fall asleep on your post. When I was in Okinawa, I had a Marine fall asleep on post. I lit this kid up, laid into him verbally. I didn't put my hands on him. Never was one to put hands on anybody, but I would definitely give a pretty good tongue lashing if right.
Yeah.
And then I looked like I was the asshole because of how I reacted to him falling asleep on post, but he didn't understand the severity of what he actually did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that at the time. I got pulled into our company commander's office. It's like, hey, you can't talk to Marines like that, blah, blah, blah. And I took that as a challenge. I was like, Roger that, sir. But I took that as a challenge, went back to our platoon's area, had a few choice words and said, hey, look, like I just got talked to by the company commander. And I really don't care. This is how we're doing business, right? Like, again, it was because of the culture that I came from. It went and got really put into this. But again, it was probably one of the best things that happened for my career to that point, because it made me think differently. It made me believe differently. It made me look at how Marines thought differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, all I had ever known was work up and deploy. And our deployments were always combat deployments. So that's all I knew to this point in my life.
Yeah, there were a lot of life or death situations. And it's kind of like you were going 150 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you come to a screeching halt, and you go from one extreme to another, and you're going to like basically 25 miles an hour in a residential zone. Yeah. And
no, 100%.
It's like, shit, I have to freaking slow it down. I have to change the way I approach things.
Oh, 100% did.
Yeah.
I hope that the Marines there learn something from me, but I definitely know I learned something from them, from every Marine in the platoon and the leaders that I had there. I had some, and to be honest, like I had some really good first sergeants when I was there. Our company first sergeant understood my mentality because he was a grunt before becoming a first sergeant. So he understood the mentality I came from.
Yeah.
So like as a staff NCO, as a new staff NCO, the first sergeants usually try to take you under their wing if they're a good first sergeant and kind of help lead you and guide you. And he did just that with me. So I'm very thankful about the senior enlisted leadership I had when I was there, because honestly, I probably wouldn't have been as successful during that time. But no, it definitely it was a great experience, and that experience allowed me really to shift into my next role in the Marine Corps. Monitors come on their road show. I talk to the monitors and stuff while I'm in Okinawa. And if anybody knows anything about Marine Corps duty station, nobody chooses to go to 29 Palms, by the way. I was one of the guys that did. I chose to go to 29 Palms. I actually requested it because, again, that's where our MOS school was at. And as the staff NCO and being now learning what I learned while in Okinawa as a leader and kind of shaping more into, I guess, the mentor type of role of leadership as a staff NCO, I was like, okay, like I've done combat, like I've been with the wing, I've been with MLG, I've been with infantry battalion, been back to the wing, but more at like a group level wing. How can I now give back to the Marine Corps? Because at one point early in my enlisted career, I wanted to be a drill instructor. Like that's how I wanted to give back to the Marine Corps. Couldn't do that because of being hypertensive. So I got medically disqualified from doing that, which I thought was odd because I can go on combat deployments, but I can't go train recruits with high blood pressure, whatever.
Yeah.
Not my decision to make, I guess. But I was like, how else can I give back? And so I was like, shoot, I'm just going to be an instructor at my MOS school. I go teach new Marines on how to be basic data Marines. And so had my call with the monitor during their road show. And again, probably easiest staff NCO he's ever had to talk to, kind of how it was for me with my recruiter when I came in this time, is like, hey, look, I know nobody's wanting to jump on and go to 29 Palms, but I do. I'll go to 29 Palms. And so, yeah, and it was literally within the next week, I had orders at 29 Palms. When I left Okinawa, came back. And again, I was fortunate enough to where we did kind of an administrative type of request where my family got to stay in base housing at Camp Lejeune while I was in Okinawa. Since they didn't get to go with me, it was definitely cheaper because the Marine Corps didn't have to move me and my household goods when I went to Okinawa. They just had to move me and my personal stuff that I took with me.
Yeah.
Kept my family in base housing. So whenever I went to 29 Palms, they flew me back to North Carolina, packed up the house. And actually my wife had to pack up the house because I was still in Okinawa when they came to move our household goods, and picked them up. And then we drove to 29 Palms from North Carolina and met all of our stuff there. And yeah, I mean, I got out there in 2015. So the summer of 2015 is when I showed up to the Marine Corps Communication Electronics School in 29 Palms. And I'll be quite honest with you, I love 29 Palms, man. Like up until this point in my career, I'd only been there as a entry-level student or in the field, and I hated both of those experiences. And again, most Marines only know 29 Palms from being there in the field, and it sucks being in the field in 29 Palms because it's the desert. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
But actually being a permanent personnel in 29 Palms is by far probably one of the best duty stations I'd ever been in. Their Marine Corps Community Services was awesome. The best I'd see, like better than Pendleton's. Like they always had free concerts. They always had like UFC fights coming on base. There was tons of family stuff on 29 Palms because again, there was really nothing else to do. So they had to do something for the Marines.
They had to
and
bring
the
it to
families.
you, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Right.
Yeah.
So it was nice. So again, I enjoyed it. There from 2015 until 2000. I mean, I guess technically end of 2018. So 3.5 years ish. Roughly.
Wow.
Enjoy every bit of it. But yeah, talk entry-level Marines.
You might be the only Marine I think I've ever talked to who actually has positive positive feedback about 29 Palms.
And My wife loved being out there too. Actually, she says the same thing I do. She thinks that was the best place we'd ever been,
Wow.
even outside of Pendleton and Camp Lejeune. 21 Palms was by far the best. It was very family oriented. Everything that like the base hosted, it was always around the family, not just the young Marine. They did young Marine things too, but they always also included families in everything they planned. A lot of installations are much bigger, much more widespread. They're also around a lot more stuff, like Pendleton's in San Diego, Miramar's in San Diego, Camp Lejeune, yeah, Jacksonville, North Carolina, but you have Wilmington, Raleigh. Like there's a lot of other things you can do in the general vicinity. And most of the time, it's all about the young single Marine that they host or try to tailor their things to. So on Palms, you got a little bit of everything and a lot of family stuff, which we like.
Hey, you said you were out there for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So what was it like being an MOS instructor?
It was challenging at first. What I will say is I had been up to that point, I had been successful because of the Marines around me. This was the first time that my success was 100% on my shoulders, not because I had good Marines around me and supporting me. Because one instructor to 20 to 30 Marines, if they don't learn, it's because you didn't teach them, Yeah. So it was the first time I'd been put in kind of, I guess, that situation. Like, again, everywhere else I'd been, I'd had really good Marines around me, whether it be my peers that I worked with or the Marines that worked underneath me that I was in charge of. Again, always had good Marines that did their job really well and was very successful. So in turn made my job easy and ultimately made me look successful. But again, I always gave them the appreciation for that and make sure that they understood that they're the reason I was successful because they were successful. And so being in that dynamic was a lot different because it was my first time ever really doing any kind of like public speaking or being up in front of a group speaking for more than just 10 minutes. I'd give like a 10-minute safety brief and that'd be it. Be done and over with, short, sweet, simple, didn't have to teach anything. And that was it, right? Now I'm spending 8 to 10 hours a day in a classroom teaching young Marines technical jobs that have no clue, like were just like me in 2006. Some of them could have been an old rodeo cowboy from North Carolina. And now I have to break it down to where they can understand it, just like my instructors did for me when I was coming through the schoolhouse as a new Marine. And so I will say, I quickly realized that I was not the most technically proficient at this time, like with the nitty and gritty and back to the basics, because the positions I were in leading up to this, I was the chief. So I managed the technicians, right? And so I didn't necessarily have to get my hands dirty. I just had to make sure that things got done and according to plan up until this point for mostly. And so a lot of things had changed. A lot of technologies had changed since I was the Lance Corporal or even the Corporal being the button pusher. So a lot of things had changed. And again, I had other good instructors around me that I leaned on very heavily and says, hey, look, like, I don't know what I thought I was supposed to know to teach these Marines. I need your guys' help. So I learned from other instructors. So again, humbling myself, knowing where my weaknesses were, and then reaching out for assistance from the ones that stood out to me as being the more technical experts around in like the instructor staff. I picked up my very first class as a solo instructor in October of 2015. Within 3 months of being at the schoolhouse, I had my own class leading for 62 training days.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's included. So like, that's not included. So like those 62 days obviously don't include like the Thanksgiving Day break, Veterans Day. And then I don't know how other MOS schools are, but McSess shuts down for like half of December because of Christmas and New Year's, right? So like half of December is shot. So yeah, so 62 training days.
Post-production Pete here. The number of training days for the course John taught. It's actually 89 training days. Post-production Pete, out.
It was a lot of fun though. I really enjoyed it, and I learned even more there about my job, like the technical aspect of my job, than I had anywhere else I'd been before, because of what I've had to teach. I had to teach it. So like I had to make sure I understood it inside and out so I could translate that into non-technical terms to somebody who has no idea what I'm even talking about. So that was just a different challenge. So it was going back to when I was in Okinawa, figuring out how to teach Marines who have never needed to have a combat mindset on what that really means. Right. And then trying to take that kind of way of looking at it and shaping, and now taking that out of the combat context, and now taking a very technical career field and translating that into college age adults who know nothing about computers or any kind of like IT stuff.
Yeah.
It was a challenge, but it was a fun challenge though.
I get what you mean by you're having to put yourself in their shoes just so you can understand what they may or may not be going through.
Yeah.
I totally get it. When I train people, it's having to put myself in their shoes and not expect them to get exactly what I'm going to say. Like, you're going to have to break it down, Mickey Mouse style as much as you can, because you want them to get it. Like you said, you don't want that success rate to be low. And were there any challenges with that first class where you were like, oh shit, I think I might have a few failures here and there?
I had a couple failures in my first class. I mean, what I learned is that comes with every class. There's going to be some Marines, no matter how much effort you try to put into them or they try to put into the class, they're just not going to get it. And that's just kind of how it is. Just like not every Marine you started recruit training with graduates from recruit training. Or if they do, it may not be with your platoon. They may have to get recycled. Kind of the same mentality at the MLS was, we give you a second chance, you get recycled, you go back through the training again. If you don't meet at that time, then you get reclassed and we assign you a new MOS and go to a different job. It's kind of what we did. But again, I had to quickly start learning how to identify the ones that cared and wanted to do good and was giving 100% all the time versus the ones that were not doing well in class, but also didn't care, because I didn't want anybody to fail. And so I would put time and effort into anybody that was struggling, regardless if they were trying or not. And my first class, that took a lot of learning for me, right? Like, is again, being the one that's in charge of their education, you want to make sure you give them every opportunity to learn the material. And so you do whatever it takes to ensure that happens. By my second class, I had to be like, you know what? Like, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity. You can stay during chow, or we could stay for an hour after class, but it's going to be on you to show up. I'm not going to make you. You're going to put in the work. And if you want to, you can. If you don't, then the consequences are this, right? I kind of put more of a line in the sand, so to speak, with my follow-on classes around that. I always made myself available if somebody needed it, but I didn't force them to put in the work. I just required them to put the effort in. And if they didn't, then they kind of met the consequences of that.
Yeah, you do as much as you can, and the rest is on them.
Yeah, 100%.
Understandable. What else happened during those 3.5 years at Twin and Palms?
Taught a couple, I think 3 classes total for entry level. I started doing some stuff with our staff NCO course while I was there. I didn't teach any, but I went through our staff NCO course also while I was there. Kind of helped out, did some stuff with the curriculum here and there. I did some instructor evaluations. So I became an instructor evaluator myself, where I would sit in on other instructors as they taught a class and would grade them on how they taught and, kind of gave them some constructive feedback and stuff like that. So kind of became, I guess, that instructor mentor, even not just to the students, but to other instructors. So I got to do that for a little bit. I thought that was really cool. It gave me a different perspective on, so being an instructor evaluator gave me a different perspective on how I prepared for classes also.
Okay.
Right. Because again, I would see that it gave me the opportunity to see a lot more ways of teaching than how I developed when I first got there. I actually got to sit in. I probably evaluated maybe 10 or 15 different instructors while I was there, and everybody does something different. Everybody has their own teaching style. We still follow the same kind of guidelines when it comes to teaching, but everybody still teaches it in a different way.
Yeah.
So I got to take, it was nice because I got to learn from each one of them and give them some feedback on things that I found successful. And then kind of leading into 2017. So I've been there for about 2 years. I started looking, okay, well, what do I want to do next in my career? Do I want to pick up gunning, go back to the fleet, do that stuff? Or do I want to change or shift gears altogether? Do I even want to stay in? Again, staying in was always the easy button for me. It was kind of, especially at that point in time in my career, like been in for 10 years or so and already on the second half of the retirement mark. And I'm like, you know what? It's definitely a no-brainer now. The message for the Warrant Officer Board for the 2018 selections came out, and I applied to become a warrant officer and got accepted. And really, I think what shaped why I wanted to become a warrant officer is I wanted to give back to not just the Marine Corps, because me being an instructor is how I gave back to the Marine Corps as an institution. Mm-hmm. I now wanted to give back to my community and make my community better, meaning like my MOS community better. And I figured the best way for me to do that was to become a warrant officer and eventually chief warrant officer 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I was able to stay in long enough. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the decision point for me is I wanted to give back to my community and make my community better and help it grow into the new age of technology.
And I think right there, I think we could put a pin in it.
Sounds good.
John Cole's story continues in episode 52 of Chat 62 as he makes the transition from staff NCO to warrant officer. In the meantime, stay the course and Semper Fi.
Struggling? You're not weak. You're human. Dial 988, then press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line. Train support that understands veterans. Stay the course. Thank you, Ozzy.